Have you been struggling with situations and circumstances that seem overwhelming and unending? Are you struggling with motivation to get started, to try to do something to help your circumstance or situation, to change it, to make a difference in your life, but you just struggle and you procrastinate? And others around you, like your family, your kids and your spouse, are struggling right along with you? Well, I have good news. I have an ebook that is coming out that addresses a lot of those things. It has a plan that I have used to work with people for decades now to help them to get motivated, to get past the procrastination, to help walk through situations and circumstances in their life, to give them a hope and a future. So if you're interested in finding out more about this book, I would love to share it with you and give you more information on it. You can go to my website. You can go to my YouTube page or my Instagram. Here on the podcast, you can as well. You can shoot me an email, give me a comment, and let me know you're interested, and I'll be happy to get back with you with more information. The goal is for it to be coming out by the end of June. Very excited about this happening. Well, hello, everyone. I am your host, Dara, and this is my show, Designed to Win, Ripple to Wave. I'm so glad that you're back with me today listening, and if you are here for the first time, welcome, welcome. Well, as I was praying for the episode this week, just like I do every week, I spend time with the Lord praying about the stories that He wants me to bring, the stories of victory and hope to share that people have had in their lives, to share with you. I prayed and I've been praying this week about somebody to bring on my show this week to share their story with you. I've already had a few guests on my show, and I am working on getting more, but I've been praying about it, and I just literally have hit a brick wall this week. Not a small one, but a big fat brick wall. I have prayed and about God showing me whose story and highlight, whose story He wants me to highlight, should I say, on my show. And again, as I prayed and said, okay, Lord, we're getting down to the wire here. It's already almost the end of the week. And usually I've already had that a week ahead of time and ready to go and all that good stuff, yada, yada, so to speak. And as this week neared, this morning, I was praying again and saying, okay, Lord, I know that you have something for somebody to hear this week. I know you have a story that you want told of victory. And, well, but God. That's what I can say, but God. He's always there, and He always comes through when we need something the most. So as I was praying this morning, God said to me, tell them about your victory. And I went, okay, Lord. And my first thought was, well, Lord, I have no problem telling them about my victory. However, which one do you want me to talk about? Because honestly, I have walked through so many things in my life that I have been so blessed and favored that God has carried me at times. He has drugged me at times. He has walked side by side with me. He has walked behind me, cheering me on as my biggest cheerleader. And He has been in front of me, guiding me and leading me all the way. But this particular story that God wanted me to share is a story, honestly, I don't always talk about, and it's one of my greatest victories. This story that God had me share and wanted me to share today started on December 30th, 1994. It's been 31 years ago almost. My oldest child at the time was 4 years old, my son, and my oldest daughter, she was just 1. She had just turned 1 in August of 1994. But on that particular day, my nephew, who was staying with us, he was 12 years old. He had come home with me from the holidays and wanted to spend the New Year's weekend with his aunt and uncle. And so we brought him home to spend the New Year's weekend with us. But on that evening, on December 30th, they were staying, I had the kids with me, and my husband had gone to work that day, and he was working in the evening, and he had forgotten his key to lock up when he got off work. So I told him I would bring it to him, and I would also bring him dinner. So I piled the kids all in the car, and we headed over to his office to take him dinner and the key. This was around 6 p.m. in the evening, just about the time it turns dark at night, when the streetlights haven't quite come on, but it's getting dark enough that you probably should have your headlights on. Well, as we headed out in the car, my son, who was 4, as I mentioned, was sitting in the front seat of the car. He was not in a car seat because at that time they didn't have booster seats, and a child's car seat at the time was too small for him to be sitting in. So he was sitting in the front seat with a seatbelt, which was totally legal back then at that time. And my nephew sat directly behind me in the car so that he could keep an eye on my daughter for me. And she was sitting in the back seat in her car seat right behind her brother. And as we were driving down the road, we got about a mile and a half down the road, and she started fussing. She was kind of cranky. We hadn't quite eaten dinner yet, and she was sleepy also, and she had her pacifier in her mouth, and she started fussing a little bit, and her pacifier fell out of her mouth. Well, then that made her fuss even more. So by the time we got down about a mile and a half down the road, we were coming up to an intersection, a stop sign, and my nephew said, well, I'll get her pacifier for her. So as we're pulling up to the stop sign, he unbuckled his seatbelt, and he literally almost laid across the floorboard as he unbuckled his seatbelt. He reached down into the floorboard in front of my daughter to grab her pacifier to hand it to her. Well, at that very moment that he was straddled across the floorboard, I had stopped at the stop sign, and I had looked both ways at the stop sign, and I started across the intersection. Well, that's when that very moment altered our lives in that very instant. What I remember about that was very vague. There's bits and pieces there, but the bits and pieces I do remember, they are etched in my mind forever. I felt the impact, and then I felt a release, as if I wasn't even in my car anymore, as if I was actually in a dream in a way. I wasn't scared, and I wasn't overwhelmed with emotion. I just felt light and calm, as if I was floating in air, moving fast, moving forward. And I was moving towards a light, this bright light. It just felt warm, and it felt beautiful. It was just peaceful. It seemed like it went on and on and on, like I was there for a long time. But then I heard a soft voice calling me. I kept hearing this voice calling me. It was calm. As I traveled towards this voice. And then as I traveled more, the voice seemed to get louder and louder and louder. And all of a sudden, my mind shifted from the light and the calmness and the peace to an awareness of something else. Not me anymore. Just didn't know what. It was all very strange and it was all very fuzzy. Then all of a sudden, I seemed to awaken from this, what I thought was sleep at the time. And at that moment, I realized that I was in the car and I couldn't move. I realized sometime later on that all this traveling that I was doing, that I was traveling towards heaven and that the light was coming from there. That was the peace and the calm that I felt. When I came back into my body, I was dazed, but suddenly very aware that we had been in a very bad auto accident. And the voice I was hearing now was my nephew. He was calling my name. It was a very panicked voice. He was crying and calling my name over and over again. My daughter was crying and my son was crying. And my son finally stopped crying when he realized that I could talk to him. And I tried to. But at that moment, I realized that I couldn't move. I couldn't move any part of my body. I wasn't able to feel anything, and I wasn't able to help my kids or my nephew. I didn't know at that moment how bad they were hurt. I couldn't move my head. So all I could do was try and speak to them and say something to them and tell them that things would be okay, that God was with us. I remember praying for the kids and telling God to please let them be okay. I remember saying this over and over and over again. I traveled in and out of consciousness, and I was not completely aware of everything that was going on with everyone. I did see them move my nephew on a stretcher into the ambulance. I caught a glimpse of that as they moved him across the front of the car. And I remember seeing my husband holding my son from a distance away from the car. I didn't know where my daughter was at the time, but seeing my husband hold my son gave me some comfort that maybe he was okay and that the baby was there somewhere okay. At one point, this man showed up in the car from the driver's side of the car. He talked to me. I'm pretty sure that he was a firefighter or a paramedic at the time. He got into the side of the car and he talked to me. He tried to keep me awake and tried to keep me calm. I would just close my eyes and I would just pray for my kids and my nephew. Just let them be okay. Just let them be okay. I felt God's peace during all this. I didn't feel scared and I didn't feel panicked, which was amazing because I was in that car and I couldn't move. I couldn't do anything. I later found out that it took them over 45 minutes to extract me from the car. I literally had been pinned in the car and that's why I couldn't move. I remember a little bit later waking up in the hospital. I was lying on a backboard with a neck brace on. Again, not being able to move or feel anything. But I was able to hear conversations and commotion all around me. My nephew had been brought into the hospital at the same time that I was, and they had him somewhere near me because I could hear conversations and things that were going on. I heard that they had taken him to have some x-rays and some CAT scan, MRI or something, and they were bringing him back. When they were bringing him back into the room, I heard them saying that his neck was broken. His second and third vertebrae in his neck were broken. He couldn't move from his neck down, basically in the same situation I was in. And I could just remember praying in the Spirit, just praying for him. Lord, please let him be okay. Don't let his neck be broken. I just kept declaring that he was healed in Jesus' name. At the time, I wasn't even thinking about me and the situation I was in. I honestly had a calm and a peace about me, but I just kept praying for my nephew and praying for the kids. I just wanted them to be okay. I just kept saying, Jesus, please let them be okay. Let them be healed. Let them be okay. I honestly don't know how many hours went by because I had periods of unconsciousness that I would come in and out. I was just laying there in the hospital on that backboard. I don't remember them taking me to run tests on me. I don't remember any of that. But what I do know that throughout all of this that was going on with my nephew and I and the kids is that God was at work and he was doing amazing things. God did some amazing, miraculous things that night. He healed my nephew's neck. It was actually broken in 2 places. When he came into the hospital that night, like I previously said, he was unable to move. He couldn't move his hands or his legs or anything. As they had started to prep him for traction and other things that they were going to have to do to help sustain him, this had been a while from what my husband said. It'd been an hour or so since they took him for the MRI and stuff that they did on him and the other tests that they ran on him. The nurses were prepping him and working with him and helping him. And as they were doing this, my nephew's fingers began to twitch. And he started telling them that he could feel his legs and that his hands and his fingers, he started being able to move them. And this kind of made the nurses go, what's going on? I thought that he broke his neck and he had no ability to be able to move or anything. So they took him back to run these scans on him again to see if there was a problem with the film or whatever. So they took him back and they scanned his neck again and his body again. The doctors were not understanding what was going on. They were confused about it because they knew that when he came in, he couldn't feel anything. He couldn't move his arms. He couldn't move his legs. And the x-ray said that he had a broken neck. So the second scan came back and it showed where it looked like he had some breaks in his neck, but it almost looked like a double exposure, and that's what they were calling it. So they were saying that, his neck couldn't possibly have been broken. Well, because that film didn't look too good, and they were saying that it was a double exposure, they took him back a third time and did another scan on his neck. And this one showed that indeed he had broken his neck, but it had calcified and it had healed. The breaks showed in the x-ray, but it had healed. The doctors had no explanation for it. They kept trying to come up with one, but they had no explanation. We knew, though, that God had healed his neck. He began to get all the feeling back in his hands and his legs, and he sat up, and he was moving around, and he was antsy, and my husband said it was just insane. Well, as for my own children, my son, fortunately, he only got a small cut on his forehead, and my daughter was not even touched in that accident. Her car seat saved her from getting touched in that accident. She didn't even get a scratch on her. And we give God all the praise and glory for that. Well, my injuries were worse than any of the kids. My back was broken and the break caused me to lose several vertebrae in my back. My spine shifted and landed on top of my spinal cord. It caused a constriction in the base of my back and my spinal cord that caused me to be a paraplegic. All my ribs were broken and my pelvic bone was fractured completely across it. I had lacerations to my liver and to my spleen. I looked like somebody had beaten me up really bad. I had bruises from head to toe and some cuts. I was in really bad shape. But you see, the day that I had my accident was December 30th. And a lot of people had already started celebrating New Year's early. And unfortunately for me, the doctor that was on call, the ER doctor that was on call in that little hospital in that small town where I had my accident, happened to be at an early New Year's Eve party. And my husband was told he didn't even come to the hospital, from what my husband told me. They talked to him on the phone, and he didn't even come to examine me. He just had them release me from the hospital to tell me that I should go and see a doctor in a clinic as a follow-up after the holiday. I know, it seems very unreal, but this really did happen to me. I was still kind of in and out of consciousness, wasn't really totally aware of what was going on. I didn't really feel a lot of pain at the time because I couldn't feel anything. And I was honestly in shock. My body was going into shock. My husband was furious. He was so upset with them. They kept saying, we're going to release her from the hospital. And my husband said, well, I will take her to the hospital, the nearest hospital in Houston, Texas. And we wanted to get an ambulance to transport me to Houston, and the hospital refused to get an ambulance to allow us to go to the hospital in Houston. So my husband went home to our house and he got the ironing board. I am not kidding. He got the ironing board from our home, and he came back to the hospital and he picked me up and placed me in the car and tied me down on top to this ironing board and drove me to Houston to a hospital with our kids and my nephew in tow. He drove all of us to Houston, 45 minutes away. The receiving doctor, the ER doctor at the hospital, was furious about what my husband told him about them releasing me from that hospital. The ER doctor, they ran tests on me and they took me in immediately and started running tests on me. And the ER doctor came out and told my husband that my organs looked like they had been taken out, twisted up, and put back in my body. Praise God for the doctor who cared for me at the hospital there. That man helped me tremendously. For my husband, I am so grateful that God gave him the wisdom to take me to the hospital and that he listened to God to how to take care of me that night. It was a blessing from God that all of that happened the way it did. Well, I can tell you that my recovery was a very long and hard one. I spent 4 weeks in bed. Well, actually, it was 4 months as I spent in bed. As my bones began to heal and my organs began to heal, I can tell you the emotional pain from all of it was really hard. I literally had the doctor in the hospital that came to see me, the orthopedic doctor, tell me that I needed to get a grip as soon as I could of my new reality of spending the rest of my life in a wheelchair as a paraplegic. And that I was going to have to make lots of life choices to now take care of my 2 small children. That's literally what the doctor told me. This was very hard for me because the reality was sinking in that I could no longer care for my kids, my little children, in the manner in which I had always dreamed that I could and that I had been. It was hard to see my family and others have to take the responsibility that I so desperately wanted, and I wanted to share. I wanted to share in raising my kids. This was a really hard time for us. I spent time in the hospital, and then when I got out, we stayed with my parents because I couldn't take care of my kids, and my husband had to work, and so my mom would take me to doctor's appointments and to appointments where they would, work on my legs and move my legs so my legs didn't atrophy, and just lots of doctors and therapists and all that kind of stuff. As I'm recovering and recuperating, my husband was offered a job in my hometown, and due to the accident that I had, we had an unsurmountable amount of hospital and doctor bills that we were just having a difficult time paying for. So we decided it would be best to take this opportunity for a job that my husband had. All I can say, it was a divine appointment from God. We didn't know it at the time, and we were kind of feeling it was, but we didn't know how much of a divine appointment it was. When we moved to my little hometown, I had to get a new orthopedic doctor to work with me and a doctor to take care of me. So I got a new doctor, and the new doctor that I went to see, the first thing that he told me when I visited with him is that if he was going to do surgery on me, it wouldn't make a difference, that all the surgery in the world that he could do on me wouldn't make a difference unless I changed my mindset. Because you see, my mindset had changed greatly when the other doctor that I had seen in Houston had told me that I needed to get a grip and understand that I would be a paraplegic for the rest of my life. And I had such a state really of depression for a period of time because I couldn't do anything I was used to doing. This was the way things were going to be for me. I couldn't take care of my children the way I wanted to, all of those things. But this doctor said to me that first and foremost, that if I didn't trust God, that nothing was ever going to change. That I needed to find hope in all that I was facing and not despair. This is literally what he told me. And that moment in time, it changed things for me. From that day forward, it made a big difference. I began to actually pray for God to heal me and to give me peace in all of it. I prayed and I just gave it to God. And I started having a lot of peace about it and trying to learn how to take care of my kids and be a mom in a wheelchair and all those things. But during this process, something happened. I began to get pains in my legs and pains in my back. When I would sit in the wheelchair, it would just be so excruciatingly painful. And I felt like my feet were on fire. But my husband took me to the ER one night because I was just hurting so bad and having so much pain. And the doctor in the ER told me that it was just coming from my mind, that I was just having what they call ghost sensations, as if I had it, but I didn't. But that is not what was happening. I was actually getting the feeling back in my feet, in my legs, and because my nerves, and I hadn't been able to feel my nerves in so long, and I hadn't been up and I hadn't walked and those kinds of things, that's where the pain was actually coming from. What happened is that God healed my back. He healed my back. It wasn't an instant healing where I just got up and I started walking. and running like you see some people that are healed instantly, that miracles happen. It wasn't like that for me, but God did heal my back. When I started getting the feeling back in my legs, then began hours and hours of therapy, painful therapy, therapy in a swimming pool, therapy being hung like a little kid in a jumping Johnny, and lots of things, but a lot of therapy and a lot of pain that I walked through. But each day it got a little bit better. And I went from a wheelchair to walking on crutches and walking on a cane, and eventually not any of it. It was a process over 2 years' time. 2 years from the time that my accident happened, I was walking on my own without any issues, without any back pain or any problems. And I just want to praise God and thank God for that, because it was Him that did that for me, that healed me. And I have stood in that and stood in that victory. My journey and my family's journey through all this was so hard and it was tough. But God showed His glory in all of it, in every bit of it. It was great favor and blessing. But it's the victory that we receive when Jesus died on that cross. He came so that we would have life and we would have it more abundantly. As I previously said, it has been 31 years this December, and there have been many more things and many more stories that have happened in my life and my kids' lives. But one thing has never changed, and that is God. In all of it, He is still the same today as He was yesterday, and He will be the same tomorrow. He will be the same God that He has been for years. I want you to be able to remember that. I'm sure there is somebody out there today that needed to hear my story. That's why I do this, because I know that people need to hear the stories that from other people and the victory that they walked in, to give them hope and to give them a future. My prayer is that as you listen to my story, my victory story today, that you remember that no matter what the struggle is and what Satan is going to throw at you, because he does, that God is always there. He is there now and He's there forever. We may not get our miracle in an instantaneous second, which is really what a miracle is, but we will get a healing. There are people in the Bible where Jesus laid hands on them and they were instantly healed. And then He told them to go out and talk about their story. And then there are people that were healed and He told them to go and walk out their healing. And I was that person. I really believe God had me walk out my healing because I needed to do that. I needed to grow my faith and know more about faith and standing in what I believed. And I stood and I walked in my victory. And you can stand and you can walk in your victory today too. So just remember that. I hope that my telling my story today has just blessed you and brought you favor. And I hope that it is bringing you hope and peace in whatever situation and circumstance you may be in. It may not be as extreme as mine, but it might be, and it might be even more than mine. But my prayer is that God will bless you. He will give you favor, and He will answer all the prayers and answer it in His great timing, because God's timing is perfect and it will always bring abundant favor and blessing. If you have enjoyed this episode today and listening to my story today, I hope that you will take it and you will share it and you will pass it on, that somebody else out there needs to hear this. They will be able to hear it. I really appreciate you listening with me and sharing this time with me every week. I look forward to it. I hope that you look forward to it. I look forward to being back with you every week. So please make sure that you get on the YouTube channel, you subscribe to it, you share this channel, that other people will be blessed by the words that God gives me to speak on this channel, and others when they tell their stories and their victories. I hope you've enjoyed this today, and I pray blessings and favor over you as you go into this weekend. Please be sure and leave me a comment. Also, get with me about the new ebook that's coming out if you are interested in it. I pray for each and every one of you. Please be blessed, be encouraged, and until next time.